way. Let's find out what is crashing in the video game industry now.
It seems pretty obvious to anyone who's actually been paying attention to the video game industry that there is a crash incoming. There's been a steady decline in revenue. There's been a lot of video game developers being laid off, losing their jobs, studios shut down, a lot of larger studios consolidating, especially in the AAA space. Game console sales were down last year. It was very, very bad. It was the worst year since I think the mid-90s for console sales. And now we're seeing Nintendo cut back on the production of the Switch 2. And we're seeing Xbox and just today, PlayStation raising their prices on their consoles to try to get more blood out of the stones that are left, which is insane.
This is why they
nobody raises the price of a 5-year-old console, but here we are because they got to make up the deficit, right? And if you go out to the headlines are bad. Right, you go out to the headlines and you look up game industry decline. We've got Epic Games laying off 1,000 people in Fortnite. Fortnite, which is probably the most successful game, live service game out there right now. IGN's got this headline: video game physical software and hardware sales had the worst November in the U.S. since 1995.
No one's got money.
Modern video games are in decline, losing the creativity they once had. I agree with that 100%. The games industry, developers go their own way as the jobs dry up. And a lot of consumers are tuning out. And we've been covering this for probably 2 years now. A lot of people are just not playing new games. They're not reading new comics. They're not participating in new pop culture because it has become enshittified. And I'm not just talking the political messaging. And I'm not talking every game. I'm not talking every comic book. I'm not talking every TV series, but a lot of them. They become enshittified with predatory marketing, predatory monetization methods. The prices are very high. The entertainment bang for your buck is not there. Most of these games are live service. Most of these games you don't own. In fact, I think Larry Bundy put a tweet up today talking about how in the fine print, when you buy a Sony game now, you technically don't own the game, even though you own the physical copy of the game. It's very weird. It's a very different industry. Meanwhile, we've got a lot of kids, a lot of Gen Z and Gen Alpha going back to older games, going back to older media, physical media. They want analog things again. So yeah, the modern video game industry absolutely positively is going to collapse pretty soon. It's going to become right-sized. I'm going to use my finger quotes here. Right-sized out of necessity because the base is not there. Guess what? People got sick of being pay pigs and they got sick of all the new bullshit. And it's these companies' fault. I mean, they went out and they spent $300-400 million on high profile failures, right? And, because of that, a lot of people had to get laid off. But the projects that those people were put on probably weren't the smartest projects to begin with. Can you imagine how many games you can make with $400 million? And they blew it on like one game, like on Concord with Sony, right? And I think if I remember correctly, and this is, I'm not going to Google it, but I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head. I think Final Fantasy VII cost like $40 million to make, the original Final Fantasy VII, which was a hell of a lot of money for a game back in the 90s. And it was a huge, huge risk. And now games cost many times that. And they just burn this cash. And we've had so many high-profile AAA failures. And we are really right back to where we were in the 1980s with the video game industry crash, where there were a lot of high-profile failures. Atari was cranking out massive amounts of shit, wound up in landfills. See also E.T., Pac-Man, all these other games. I remember the crash, the first crash. I was a little kid, but I remember going to the store. You could buy Atari games for literally 99 cents. Like you could go to nobody was buying video games, right? Now, the arcades were doing fine and home computers took off, right? So that sort of offset it, but this does feel very similar. And this is
Nintendo made it.
John Romero and his wife, Brenda, John, who worked on Doom, saying that, yeah, there is another crash incoming. It's not looking good. And they said, yeah, this feels very much like it did in the 1980s where everybody knows they're on the edge of it. And you could see the signs. again, I was a little kid, but I've watched a lot of documentaries, and all the signs were there, the glut and the negative headlines and all the corporate bullshit that was going on. And it was a dog and pony show, and the bubble burst. And then, fast forward a year or two and you've got 99-cent games, Atari games that you can't give away. So before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. This is Neon. This is Clownfish TV. We talk about video games and other things, right? And we have been following the rapid decline of the modern video game industry. I would say right sizing, but a lot of people are going to get caught up in the layoffs. And I think a lot of gamers, consumers are going to walk away from modern games and probably not look back, because let's be honest, there are more games available to play right now than there ever has been. And no one human can play through every video game ever made in a lifetime. So if you decided today, hey, I don't want to play any new games, or I'm going to have a cutoff, like, 1997, that's my cutoff. I'm playing all the games for 1997. You're good, man. You have decades of games to play through. And that's just it. And I think people are starting to realize that. Like, I don't need to have the latest, greatest thing. It'd be nice if the latest, greatest thing was awesome and it didn't completely suck, right? A lot of people are enjoying, Arc Raiders, and they enjoyed Helldivers and Power World. And there have been a lot of games out there that, been pretty good. I mean, there actually are a lot. I've sunk so many hours into Vampire Survivors. It's insane. I probably got like 150 hours into that game. So there have been some pleasant surprises, right? But they are fewer and further between, I think, for a lot of people. And unfortunately, the way the video game industry works is you have to constantly have new stuff that people want to buy. You can't just like say, hey, we don't really need to put a lot of games out because people are still buying old games. So we'll just put a new game out like once every 5 years. Yeah, that's not going to work. You always gotta have revenue, and I think it's definitely drying up here. So this is again John and Brenda Romero reflecting on the state of the industry, saying we were there in the 1980s for the crash, and this is definitely crashier. So they're saying it actually feels worse to them.
If you're in Canada and have over $10,000 of debt, payday loans, credit cards, and lines of credit that you can't pay.
And this came from gamesindustry.biz. The pair have had to dramatically downsize their studio since the money dried up, but they're determined to keep on coding to the bitter end. Okay, so they said last year was something of an annus horribilis for Romero Games. Faced with a sudden funding rug pull, the studio has had to downsize dramatically, but still hanging in there. Romero Games was set up in Ireland just over a decade ago by John and Brenda Romero, gaming's foremost power couple. John, of course, is most well known for pioneering work on Doom in the 90s, the game that helped to kickstart the first-person shooter genre, while Brenda has an enormously long list of game credits that takes in titles like Jagged Alliance 2 and Wizardry 8. Speaking to GamesIndustry.biz ahead of Game Republic's Dark and Doomy event in Wakefield, John and Brenda reflected on the hardships they've faced over the past year and the state of the industry more generally. I feel like the industry's in a really horrible place right now, says Brenda, likening it to the U.S. video game crash of 1983. I mean, we were there in the 1980s for the crash, and this is definitely crashier. There are so few people that have not been affected, or their partners affected, or they're worried about being affected. It's really a difficult time right now. Yeah. I mean, look, every damn day there's another studio laying people off. There's another project getting canceled. There's another studio getting shut down. Every damn day. I think the games cost too much. Both agree it's difficult to see how it will all end. John points out that Battlefield 6 did really, really well, only for EA to make layoffs in the studios behind it. I don't understand what that's all about. I think I personally think what's behind it is that they're losing so much money in other parts of the company that even the successes they have are not successful enough. And they have to make cuts. So they're like, okay, well, what's the long-term prognosis for this franchise or that franchise? And even if it did okay, and this is kind of like, how Disney thinks, and we've talked about this with people before, and they're like, you're lying. They're like, that actually made a profit. I'm like, yeah, but did it make enough profit? Did it make enough profit to be worth it? Or could they take that whatever umpteen $1 million and put it into something else and get more of a return on their investment? Even Square Enix, I was talking about Final Fantasy VII, the CEO of Square Enix at one time went on record as saying how they determine whether or not to greenlight a game is, if we put this money in the bank or we invested it, would we make more of a return on our investment? If the answer is yeah, we're going to make more of a return on our investment, investing the money than making a new game, then that's what they do. And some of these legacy companies are like, why don't they make games anymore? Why does it seem like they don't make games anymore? And the reason is that a lot of them just park their money. They don't need to make new games. They could just sell the old games forever and ever and ever. See also
Start
SNK.
doing merchandising.
See also Konami for the longest time. Actually, right now, Konami doesn't even make its own games, really. They outsource everything. Brenda is confident that people are going to keep playing games, but she struggles to comprehend how the industry crisis will be resolved. This is really one of those times where I don't know. And you hear behind the scenes, there's tremendous push toward AI. There's tremendous pushback from teams and from gamers about AI. And before you ask, we're not using generative AI, so I don't know. I think that's going to be pushed very hard. We talked about, Disney is pushing into it more and more. I know that we're going to be okay for the next little bit. And if something falls over sideways in 2027 is another exciting year, we both had a good run. I'm not going to stop making games, says John. Yeah, says Brenda. I'd say that for him, a win would be he's found dead in his chair coding. I know the feeling, man. Given the huge impact John has already had on the industry, it would be understandable if he wanted to simply rest on his laurels, reflect on past glories, given the headwinds both Romero Games and the industry more widely are facing, but he's determined to keep going. There's too much cool stuff to make. Surely the words are echoing in everyone's heads right now is that if even John and Brenda Romero are struggling, two of the biggest names in the business, then what hope do the rest of us have? So they're talking about having a terrible year. They celebrated 2025 coming to an end, a year that was that plunged Romero Games into an existential crisis. Last summer, funding was pulled for its upcoming yet unrevealed shooter, an event that coincided with Microsoft sweeping cutbacks at Xbox. Brenda won't or can't name names. How do I want to say it? We were working on a game with a major publisher, and along with a number of other studios and internal projects, we lost our funding. This is a story that I'm hearing time and time and time again. And I think the problem, honestly, is that these video game publishers are too fucking big. They're too big. They've got too many mouths to feed, too many investors to keep happy.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform.
Can you read my mind?
Describe what you want.
Oh, I got a type. I thought you said read my mind. That's not the same
You can
as reading
plan,
my mind.
customize, and expand in any
I gotta push
direction.
buttons? That's still not reading my
From
mind.
tools built for one to platforms ready for many. From passion projects to enterprise-grade systems.
Enterprise.
Everything is built in
From reading
and
my
ready to
mind
launch.
and building an app.
It's a new world of creation, where you can go as far as your imagination takes you. Can you imagine it?
Let's make your dream a reality right now.
But you want me to type it in order to make my dream a reality. I thought you said you could read my mind.
And you're better off being sustainable. You're better off being lean and mean and just running a very tight ship. But, again, Microsoft gobbles up all these companies, and then Microsoft wants these ridiculous margins on everything, and it's never enough. And you can be profitable and not profitable enough, and you can get cut that way too. Like I said, this is how big corporations, this is how they make decisions.
Buy up the company.
They're like, if we spend
Take the IP.
a ballpark number,
get
if
rid
we
of the
spend
team.
$10 million and we make $12 million, okay, that's a profit. Or we can spend the same $10 million and make 17 or 20 or $25 million. Well, we're going to spend our $10 million over there instead, because they have a fiduciary duty to their shareholders to maximize profit pretty much at any cost. And most shareholders, I'm going to be honest, they don't give a shit how the people are treated. They don't give a shit unless it affects their stock and they get negative headlines. They don't care about crunch. They don't care about any of that shit. What they get upset about is, oh, hey, those workers are going on strike. Well, that's going to cost us more, so get rid of them. That's how these decisions are made. It's not like a mom and pop company or a smaller business where they can be like, you know what, we're going to make this game because we want to make this game and we hope there's an audience for this game, but we really believe in it. And if we just break even, that's cool. Even if we take a little bit of a loss, that's okay because our other games are doing better. And as long as the company as a whole is doing better, we're fine. Now, if you work for a corporation, you don't have that luxury, at least not when times are tough, right? Initial reports that Romero Games was set to close proved wide off the mark. That was frustrating because what happened is an Irish media site saying Romero Games has shuttered its doors. We're not done. They reached out to me at 8:15 on a Friday. I was on a ferry, and then within 20, 30 minutes, they already published it. So a lot of U.S. outlets picked it up. Yeah, that's frustrating. Anyway, that publication has since apologized for jumping the gun, but no, we never closed. It wasn't without casualties. Brenda says around 110 people were working at the studio last summer, and that number is down to 9. 9 people down from 110. She says she has a feeling of survivor's guilt after going through the lengthy redundancy process. It was really hard because a lot of us had been working together for 10 years. I mean, it was obviously hardest on the people who were ultimately made redundant, but yeah, it sucked. It's the worst. There's nothing worse than that. I've been there. I've had to let people go. We had to let a bunch of our writers go a year or two ago when it was very obvious that Google completely fucked up the internet and there's no coming back for niche websites. It's not going to happen. I had to make that decision before it got to the place of no return where it was like, do we let people know that we can't do this or what? And before that, I was a manager for a company and I had to help make the list of people that were going to get laid off. And sometimes it was like, we're not going to lay them off now, but we're going to lay them off 3 months from now because we got to get them, to finish this project they're working on. And they know, internally, the companies know. Sometimes like, yeah, you're only here for like 3 more months. You don't know you're only here for 3 more months. And sometimes you want to drop a little hint like, oh, you're.
That's the risk when your business is dependent on another company's business in order to survive. When Google was just an indexer, it was fine. But then the indexer wanted to be a shaper of the internet. And they have definitely gone that far.
We're looking at houses, huh? Yeah, now's not a real good time to buy a house. I'm just saying, and that happened to me at the one company I worked at. The guy was, he was a nice guy, but he was not a good fit for the company. He was very high strung. People could not stand him. I always got along fine with him, but a lot of people couldn't stand this guy. And they were like, yeah, we're going to have to get rid of him because he's causing too many problems. And I knew that. And I actually kind of fought to keep the guy, but he was like, yeah. So my wife's got, literally, it's like right out of a freaking movie. It's like, yeah, so my wife's pregnant with twins and we're going to buy a house. And I'm sitting there thinking like, oh, dude, don't buy a house. I know what's coming. Please don't buy a house. And he did. And he closed on the house. And then like a week later, they laid him off. I was like, damn it. But I'm not allowed to say, I wasn't allowed to say anything. I tried to discourage him. I'm like, yeah, maybe you should stay here a little bit longer. Right before you go buy that house. Oh, it's a really good deal on the house. I'm like, yeah, but maybe you really should see how things are going to go here before you commit to buying a house. John says redundancy process was difficult because you can't really communicate with everybody the way you normally would communicate. Yeah, a lot of times you have to just kind of get them out the door. And once they're no longer with the company, you can't really talk about company shit anymore with them. The one job I got laid off from, since it was government adjacent, I was literally out of the system before they told me I was out of the company. Like they had already shut my email and everything off that morning before I came in. They're like, yeah, you're done. You're like done. Like you can't even get your email. You can't get your voicemail. You have no access to anything in our system because you're not part of the company anymore. And that,
goodbye.
That's it,
Have
man.
a nice day.
I didn't even get to say goodbye. It's just like you're done.
Not even a goodbye.
You got to go.
And
that's it. And that's how it works sometimes. They said, yeah, there's a changing industry. They said the bigger worry here is that the kind of AA territory in which Romero Games has been working is the exact area that's been hit the hardest by the current industry crisis. So even though Clair Obscur Expedition 33 has shown to be a massive hit, Many publishers are preferring to hedge their bets on smaller titles with budgets of $1 million or less, while the big players are going all in with huge budgets. John acknowledged that micro teams are where it's at right now. Yeah, and that's where the video game industry got started, right? It was smaller teams. You look at your Nintendo games, you look at arcade games, and you look at the credits, and there might only be a dozen guys working on that game. And now there's like 1,200 people working on the game. Okay, so that's where the budget's going in a lot of ways. And gamers, I don't think, really care so much about the graphics like they used to. It used to be like, well, the better the graphics, the better the game. And that's not really the case now. I don't think it's the case at all. I think it's people want a really good game, and they don't want to break the bank for that game. And, people are going back to like retro style games. I think you have to have smaller teams. We got to a micro team, adds Brenda, not the way we would have opted to get to a micro team, but we got there. They said the game is anything but micro. They said there's a huge amount of content. They remain upbeat, knowing the process of learning Unreal Engine 5 is now behind them. They said, despite all the hardship, one thing that's abundantly clear from our conversation is how passionate they are about games and about each other. I know how that is. I, too, am married to a geek. Brenda admits to a hardcore Balatro obsession that is currently seeing her chase the elusive completionist plus achievement. I have not played much Balatro. My son plays it a lot. I need to play it. We play Minecraft a lot. They met 40 years ago. That's awesome. Hopefully this is couple goals. Hopefully this is where Geeky and I are in 15, 20 years from now. But it's not good. It's not good, unfortunately, and a lot of people are going to get caught up in it. But I do believe this is a right sizing of the video game industry. But I think everything that we're seeing right now, the rejection of modern games, the lack of console sales, gamers are burnt out too. They're tired. They're not pay pigs, right? I mean, I've got arcade. I've got literal arcade machines in my office. I've got tons of games I haven't even touched yet. I could never buy another console, and I would have plenty to play for the rest of my life. And I think a lot of other people are in the same position right now. So, like, why should I go spend an extra $150 on a PlayStation 5 when it's going to be obsolete in 2 years anyway? I'm just saying.
And this is
going to
where
wrap it
we
up.
get back
Please
to
subscribe.